Okay. Welcome to the 6th episode of Kill Your Ego Podcast. My guest today is one of my favorite personalities, period, on social media, and you guys have probably never heard of him, and you should. Sam Davis. Sam, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks a lot for having me. This is exciting. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, this is fun. And the name of this podcast is Kill Your Ego, and the beauty of this is I'm going to build up Sam's ego the whole time he's here, hopefully in a good light for him. But Sam is probably the greatest hunter in the United States that you've probably never heard of, in my opinion. I met Sam through Monty Buckmaster, who owns the Mint Bar next door. This was a couple years ago. Monty said, you got to meet this kid, this, that, and the other thing, and was talking about you and everything you do. And I came in the bar, and immediately when I came in the bar, Sam, how tall are you?
6'2".
Yeah, I'm going to get a little weird here. I got a man crush on Sam. Sam's like 6'2" and looks like Captain America. And I went to shake his hand, and he about ripped my fucking arm off, excuse the language, off my shoulder and crushed my hand, and that's just Sam. Subsequently, since then, I've met some of Sam's family, specifically his mom will come in the coffee shop, and I'll have great conversations with her. Your mom is from Sheridan, correct?
Mom is actually from Cody. But yeah, she's a Wyoming gal. Cody, Wyoming.
She's on the other side. Cody, for those of you guys who don't know, sits on the other side, the west side of the Bighorn Mountains. Sheridan is on the east side of the Bighorn Mountains. They lay about the same. Cody's close to Yellowstone, and Cody is probably, in my opinion, in the lower 48, one of the last few bastions that's like the Wild West in a sense.
It truly is.
It's a bleak town, but it's a neat main street. But everywhere within 30 minutes outside of Cody, you're in the middle of nowhere, and it's wilderness country, backcountry. So your mom's from Cody.
Yep.
Where's your dad from?
Dad is originally out of Yakima, Washington, and he came here when he was 18 with the polo horses, and he never left. He was riding polo horses in Washington, and he ended up hauling some horses down here to Sheridan, Wyoming, and he never left.
Never went home?
Yep.
Stayed here?
Stayed here.
So you were born and raised here, obviously?
Born and raised in Sheridan.
And you're married?
Yep, married. My wife's from Sheridan. And
yeah, and we'll talk more about that because she's been hammering. She's been hammering it out in the backcountry and Wyoming Front Range. She's crushing it in the hunting scene, and that's one of the reasons. The main reason I wanted to have you on. Well, not the main. I wanted to talk to you. I enjoy talking to you. I think you're one of the best guys I've ever met in my life. But on top of that, watching your hunting, I am new to Wyoming. I grew up in Kansas, so pheasant hunting, whitetail, dove hunting, just standard stuff. But Wyoming is obviously a totally different frontier for hunting. And I watch everybody from the guys that have 1 million to 10 million followers all the way down to guys that have 10 followers that don't ever use Instagram, that might throw one elk hunt up a year. And you're on the bottom end of that because you don't have a crazy following, you don't have a bunch of crazy stuff going on, but you have literally one of the best hunting and conservation Instagram accounts I've ever seen. You guys can tap into this. I'm going to say while we're on this, his Instagram is S Davis, just like it sounds, SDAVIS 2506 or 2506. So Sam Davis it's at S Davis 2506. So follow his Instagram. He did not come on this show to get Instagram followers. He probably doesn't care if I show you guys or talk about his Instagram account. I guarantee he doesn't care. I'm telling you to go watch his Instagram account. He does more hunts, and the beauty of it is 90% of the hunts that I've watched you do over the last 2 years until recently with your wife are by yourself. You just go out and hunt. It's spiritual for you. Am I wrong?
No.
I'm going to let you talk. I'm talking too much.
No, you're good.
Tell me what hunting is to you and how you got into hunting. Let's hear the background on this.
All right. So growing up, my dad worked for the Sheridan Fire Department. So my dad came here to polo horses, like I said, and then he was working on ranches. And from then he decided that he couldn't make a living on a ranch wage. So he went to the fire department, started working with that fire department job. My dad had always been into hunting. Grandpa hunted back in Washington. I got old family photos. It's in our blood. Same thing on my mom's side. My mom's side, all my uncles are outfitters out of Cody, Wyoming over the years. They've been in the grizzly bear country. They've all been sheep guides. I mean, everything on both sides has been hunting. So when I was born, my dad worked for the fire department.
Here in Sheridan?
Yeah, Dad was the captain of the fire department in Sheridan, Wyoming. And Dad He had his 4 off, 4 on with the fire department schedule. My dad guided. So I grew up as with a dad that was a hunting guide. So
quintessential Sheridan guy, firefighter 4 days a week, a hunting guide 3 days a week.
Yeah. And then he'd part-time on the ranches in the summer. So I was on ranches with my dad, and he knew all the old timers. So he'd send me to these ranches, and I worked on ranches all summers. And anyways, as far as the hunting goes, Dad was a guide. So I was, from the word go, I've been hunting. 2.5 years old, I was horseback on pack trips with him. Dad would pack diapers on one side of horses and chocolate milk on the other side, and he'd pack me in the mountains. And so I spent my time horseback in the mountains. I didn't get to go elk hunt until I was 7 years old with him. That was kind of an age just because what it took. And so then I grew up like that, rifle hunting. Had a bow as a kid. He plinked around the yard with us, shooting hay bales and rabbits. Yep. And when I turned 15 years old, I told my mom, I was like, hey, I really want to buy a bow. And they didn't know if that was one of those things I was going to go through where you had a bicycle and you want to be a BMX racer, blah, blah, blah. If it's going to be one of these little things I just went through a stage. And I was like, nope. I took all my money. I had $196. I bought a PSE Nova. There was an archery shop in Sheridan, Wyoming at the time called Cloud Peak Archery. And I rode my bike down there and I bought this bow. Well, Mom helped me get a dozen arrows. And I couldn't ride my bike and carry this bow, so the archery shop owner at the time would let me just hang my bow in the shop, and I would ride my bike there, and I would shoot, constantly. And it was a long ride. My folks live 1.5 miles out of town is all, but the archery shop was all the way up by C&K.
Yeah.
And I lived by the airport, so, it was 6 miles, 7 mile bike ride, and I'd ride there, and I'd shoot. Anyways, long story short, this love, this passion at 15 years old, it started.
How old are you now?
I'm 35. So at 14 that summer, rolling into 15, I'd already had a rifle elk tag that I'd applied for that year. But I was able to buy an over-the-counter archery deer license. Anyways, my cousin came from Cody, Wyoming, and he was going to be up on the mountain on Labor Day weekend, opening day. And my mom hauled me up there, dropped me off. I went camping with him. I ended up shooting my first mule deer buck, a pretty good buck up on the mountain. I was 15. And from that day on, it was solidified. Bow hunting was in my blood, and since fall of 2000, I've killed 2 animals with a rifle a bull elk in 2006 and a buck deer in 2004, and everything else has been archery for the last.
In Wyoming fashion, I don't even need to ask, but I'm going to, because listeners are gonna, we have a lot of listeners that are hunters, but we have a lot more that are want to get into it, and then there's probably a small portion that live in New York City or wherever, Chicago, and don't hunt at all and probably are fascinated by it. So I'll ask a lot of questions just so you can explain it to folks. But Wyoming style, you utilize every single inch of that animal, every inch, every pound, every piece of flesh, everything in that entire animal gets used and utilized correct when you're out hunting.
Oh, absolutely. So growing up, I remember my dad he shot the first animal that was available. It was about the meat. He always said, can't eat antlers, can't eat the horns. So it was all about the meat. That's what I grew up on, is eating wild game. We had an antelope in the freezer. We had a pronghorn. We had a mule deer or whitetail in the freezer, and we had a bull elk in the freezer always. So I grew up on wild game, and to this day, that's what sustains my family.
You guys still do the same thing?
Oh yeah, we go through it it's unbelievable how much meat we do eat. Just my wife and I have a 3-year-old daughter, how much just our household we go through. I got 3 freezers that are full, and we go through pounds and pounds of it, hundreds of pounds of it.
And tell us about your wife. I don't know if she wants the attention. I don't know if you want to talk about it on a podcast.
I gotta brag on her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got together 2014. We started dating, and she would watch me shoot my bow. I'm religiously every day shoot my bow. It's just one of those things. Yeah. Muscle memory. So I'd always go fling a few arrows. Well, she was fascinated with how fascinated I was with archery, and she was like, "Man, that just looks fun." Christmas rolls around that fall. She watched me. So hunting season was that fall. Killed a bull elk and some stuff, and she helped me pack it out, and she saw just how passionate I was about it. Well, that Christmas, I bought her a bow, and she started shooting. Well, fast forward, and she got hooked, and that first year, she killed a really nice bull elk with her bow, buck deer, and then just consistently. So the last 5 years, she's had tags. She's killed 4 bull elk that's fed families, her folks. That's the thing, too, is not just our family. We kill a couple bull elk. Like right now, this bull that my wife just harvested a bull on Wednesday, that bull's getting packaged up. It's at the meat processor right now. It's going to Cody, Wyoming, to one of my aunts, and it's going to feed my aunt and uncle.
And that's not just you here in town, and it's not just Sheridan and Wyoming. I think there's a lot of places in America where, there's the conservation side of it. They don't give tags. They monitor the tags. They don't just give them out to anybody that wants to go kill an animal. Yeah, it's monitored closely. I think Wyoming does a pretty good job of it, if not a great job. But people hunt here, and they hunt for food to sustain life, and they could go to a grocery store and support beef and cow and everything else coming in from Brazil and Australia and all over the world, but they're going out and harvesting their own animals, processing their own meat or having it done locally, and then they're feeding themselves and their families. Which, do you mind if I share her Instagram as well?
Go
so Sam's wife Peyton, her Instagram is Peyton, Payton K Davis. So Peyton at Peyton K Davis, but follow her stuff too, because she's knocking stuff down and hunts in the same light. Like they're just fun to watch. Again, I'll say this 10 more times on this episode. Sam's hunting Instagram is more entertaining to me and more real than any other hunting Instagram out. And I'm not taking away from any other hunters out there, big or small, but it's just entertaining because aside from your wife, I mean, how often do you hunt with somebody else besides just you or your wife? I mean, I know you do a little bit, but I'd say 90% of your trips are out by yourself.
If I'm going hunting with my license for myself, I would, 90% of it's by myself. And there's times where I'll have like a base camp. I got a really good hunting partner friend, and we'll have a base camp together where we'll have, trucks parked at the same spot, but we go different ways. But yeah, I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been solo on almost every single one of my bull elk hunts, all my buck deer.
And you're encountering everything when I watch it. What's fun to me is because I know you're by yourself, people, and putting the voice out so people will follow you and watch this by yourself. But, man, you're having wolf encounters. You're having bear encounters. You're having, big bears. And we're not talking about black bears. We're talking about grizzly, brown bears. And you're just out there by yourself. And it just, man, it fascinates me how, and again, I'm not knocking anybody else out there, but you'll have film crews and 10 people going out to do a hunt and film this and that. And I get more entertainment and more satisfaction off of just watching yours, because I know when I'm looking at your photos and videos that you're literally taking a selfie and not a selfie sitting in your truck looking good. You're taking a selfie out in the middle of nowhere, 50 miles from anybody, from an animal that you just spent 2 days stalking, whatever, harvesting. So, for me, that's one of those things that, man, I just think you're everything that's right with hunting. That's why I wanted you to come on, and I want you to continue to come on here as we have more people on and talk hunting like you hunt, and hunting that's ethical and hunting that's responsible. So recently, what was the latest thing you just went elk hunting, because it's elk season right now? That starts September 1st.
September 1st, yeah. August 15th, pronghorn antelope opens. Yep. So that's kind of the kickoff. And I gotta say, thank you very much for all the kind words, but there's some guys out there that are legit killers too that haven't. They don't put a thing.
No,
on Instagram
they don't post anything. Yeah. And I know some of those guys.
There's some guys
here in town.
I look up to. But
yeah, and you won't even mention their name. I know there's a lot of guys here that are like that don't even have Instagram accounts. That, man, they are hunting in the same vein and tradition that people did 150 years ago.
Yeah, there's some guys I look up to in the state of Wyoming that are absolutely unbelievable.
And it's just fun to watch because, again, I think Wyoming, every state has great hunters and every state has good hunting for the most part.
Yeah.
But Wyoming, there's just something special about it. And I didn't understand until I got here. I obviously have a love for bison. I love bison. Yeah. And you guys are going to hear a little bit of noise in the background. The building we're in here on Main Street on Sheridan is getting a little bit of construction, so you're going to hear some saws and stuff going. I apologize about that, but progress is happening. I like bison. Obviously, it's my favorite animal in the world. And you're wearing a Maven Optics hat, right? Correct?
Yeah,
those
Maven
guys are out of
guys.
Lander, and those guys sent me some optics, and that's got a bison logo on it. Great company, by the way. Phenomenal guys. But for me, I didn't know much about elk because I grew up in Kansas, and you don't where I grew up in Kansas, you don't have elk. Mm-hmm. So when I got here, my first encounter with elk was driving from Sheridan to the town I live in up the mountain, which you know what direction that is.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, I come around a corner where the old Banner store is not there anymore. The old barn was, and there's a huge field right across the street from that. And two of the biggest bull elk I've ever seen, still to this day that I've seen, were just there. And that was kind of my first real, and nobody was around. This was like at 6 o'clock at night, sun was going down, and I look over, and that's the first time I've been that close to an elk and seen the power of what an elk is and the stature and how stoic they are. But, the Wyoming flag has a bison on it. I actually think, and I love bison, but I think it should be an elk on that flag, man. I don't want to take anything away from my favorite animal in the world, but tell me about Bighorn Mountains and elk, and not just the Bighorn Mountains, but this side of the state and elk hunting.
All right, that's a cool topic. So yeah,
and not just about it, but what it means to Wyoming and what it means and what this animal means to this state and what it means to you.
Yeah, it's neat that you actually said this side of the state. So elk on this side of the state, the Bighorn Mountains flourish with them. It's no secret. Some of the hardest areas to draw. When you actually apply for a tag, you have to get put into a lottery. And the Bighorn Mountains are some of the hardest areas to draw in the state. So yeah, we have phenomenal elk country. We have phenomenal elk country all the way to the South Dakota border, and it's getting more and more every single year. People think that there's just elk on the mountains. They live in the prairies, they live in the sagebrush, they live in the high deserts. I mean, elk live everywhere. They're abundant everywhere, and the Sheridan community, yeah, there's a lot. If you get an elk, it's like everybody knows in the community. It's a big thing when someone brings home a bull or brings home a cow, whatever. When they're bringing that meat home, it's oh, so and so got an elk, or so and so got an elk, and all the ranches that lay along the eastern slope of the Bighorn Mountains, they're in the wintertime. You can look at every single one of them. I mean, we're getting to where the elk numbers are almost too many. I mean, the elk numbers are ridiculous. There's 400 on this ranch, 500 on this ranch, 300 on this ranch. People saw 150 head in this haystack. Well, I've never seen elk here before. Now there's elks. I mean, Sheridan County and Johnson County, the two counties.
Well, and even Campbell. So our place is in Campbell County and Weston, and right now the fortification herd's running through there, and there's 300 to 400 elk on our property, and our property's not big compared to the rest of Wyoming ranches, and and they're out there right now. And if you drove to that place, north of Gillette, the drive out there looks like you're driving on the moon. You'd probably in your head say, "There's no effing way
there's elk
out here." And then all of a sudden you hit a pocket of pine trees and mountains and ponderosa pines, and boom, there's 300, 400, 500 elk moving through there this time of year. So it's cool. You've drawn a tag the last couple of years?
Actually, no, the last couple of years, all of my tags, and my wife too, has been just over the counter. We haven't drawn. So that's,
how does over the counter work?
You go in and you go to Walmart, and you could, or your local hardware store, and you go in, you ask, I need an elk license. They sell you a $57 elk license. And then there are areas designated in the state of Wyoming that are called a general tag, general license. And that encompasses over 50% of the tags or areas in Wyoming are general tags.
But you're also competing against
everybody else that went to Walmart and bought a tag. Exactly.
Versus getting a tag and winning a lottery and going.
Yeah, and it's called a limited quota. Yep. So the other option is a limited quota. So if you don't draw, you got a general tag. Well, it's what it is. It's a little more work.
Right.
So you're not only do you got pressure, but you got smarter elk. You're dealing with these elk that can bounce onto private land, or they're deep in the backcountry where they're 20
Talk
miles
about
in.
that for a second, because you've been dealing with this your whole life, and you also work somewhere that you guys are probably, we're not going to say where or what you do, but you work a lot with elk, on a private basis.
Yep.
So you're intimately familiar with this animal.
Oh yeah.
How savvy are they?
They're a savvy animal, and then being a herd animal makes them even more savvy. So I mean, you get those lead cows, and they're a very savvy animal. They can adapt to anything. They can get away. These bulls can get old. These cows can get old. I mean, they're smart, and then they're very smart, and they are adaptive. So they get pressure here, they're gone. They're not like a mule deer that lives in an area and stays in an area. I'm not talking, yes, mule deer are migratory, but they have the same patterns where a mule deer goes from the sagebrush up to the high country. You're going to find it in that basin. He goes back. Or you get the mule deers, east of Wyoming, in eastern Wyoming, the sagebrush country. They live in that draw. They're going to be within 2 miles. Elk, you see a bull elk out in the sagebrush country in the summertime, and he's in velvet, he might rut 30 miles away. His cows, once he gathers them up, he might bring them 15 miles back, just like you're saying on your place. You don't see elk that often, and all of a sudden this time of year, you got 300
out
rolling
of the year,
through.
And then all of a sudden they just pop up.
Exactly. So, yeah, they're very adaptive. They're very savvy. They know how to get away. They know when there's pressure. They feel pressure. They move. They have rutting grounds where they consistently kind of rut, or where they're
Let's talk about rut real quick. What is rut for an elk?
All right, so it's a breeding season. The breeding season on elk usually starts about, everybody says, the month of September. It rolls when the cows start coming into estrus. You're looking at, it's on a moon phase, and it kind of falls in that second week of September and rolls through about the second to third week of October. And that's when the bulls are cruising, looking for cows. The big bulls are breaking up these harems. So these cows will usually run in summer groups of anywhere from, say, 20 to 30 head to up to 300 head. You'll find these big groups of cows, and they'll have their calves in May and June. And then these bulls start sniffing around and coming in. Bulls will have velvet on their antlers because they regenerate their antlers every single year. These elk regenerate their antlers.
When you say velvet, it's actually they're coming in, and the reason that term or that that name came about is because it actually looks and feels like velvet.
Velvet, it's called velvet, and that's what the antlers grow in. It's a skin that grows around the antlers starting in about March. They lose their antlers in February, March. Then these big bulls generate up to 7 inches of growth a day. They can grow
7 inches a day.
7 inches a day of horn growth. Per day. That's a big bull.
That's incredible. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think and don't quote me, I think it could be more too, but I know these bulls grow crazy. And their growing season starts about March. Their antlers start regenerating. And by about the 10th of August to 15th of August, these bulls are starting to shed that velvet. And they'll actually walk over the testosterone. Their hormones change, and they know that the breeding season's coming. And so when they shed that velvet, they're hardening these antlers. And that's their weapons. That's their dominance. The bigger the antlers, the more headgear they got. That's the more dominant they are in the herd.
And every year they get bigger.
Yeah. And then they're going to plane out. So let's just go with the breeding season real quick. We'll stick to the rut. So they'll shed their velvet, say August 10th through August 20th. And then those bulls will start sniffing in these big herds of 100 cows. They'll be looking through these 100 cows. Then they'll start pulling, and they'll be fighting. And then there's a thing called bugling. So these elk make an unbelievable sound. Sounds like a dragon roaring. And they scream, and they chuckle, and they fight. And that's their dominance. They go and they paw in the mud, and they rake their horns in the mud just to look as big and strong as they can. And then they'll start pulling out of that herd of 100. They'll try and keep all 100 of them, right, in theory. Then another bull comes in, he steals 50 of them. Another bull comes in, 25. So these bulls will roll with herds or harems of anywhere from, 6 or 8 to, I've seen bulls with 50 head. I've killed a bull one time. He had 117 cows with him. I think it was early season, so he was one of the first bulls in the pack. He was, right. But, so that's how the breeding goes. And then they will breed throughout into about the middle of October, and then those big bulls will start pulling off, and then they go hide like a recluse, and they pull themselves off, and those cows will gather back up, and that's how wintertime hits.
Gotcha.
So as these bulls grow, like you started to say, they get bigger every year. A bull gets into maturity when he's about 4. He will breed as a 2-year-old. He will breed as a spike, which is a 1-year-old bull. He'll breed as a yearling, but there's not that good of a chance that he's going to get an opportunity because he's going to get ran off by a mature bull.
Gotcha.
And 2 years old, they're going to have a set of antlers on. They'll be making some noise. They'll definitely be sniffing around, but they're not the head boss. 3 years old, they'll get some cows bred. 4 years old is when a bull starts hitting maturity, and he's going to have a harem. He's going to be strong enough to push other bulls off, yada, yada. 7, 8, 9, that's the peak. That's a stud right there.
Big boy.
Yeah, and he's going to be in the top end of it. And then there will hit a decline. You get those bulls, I can't say exact age, depending on where you're at. You get bulls that live out at 6,000 feet, 5,000 feet elevation, where their winters are easier. They got private ground where they got good feed all year round. That's where your bulls are going to get bigger body size. They're going to get probably better antler growth. And they're going to live to be 13, 14 years old because they got the private land factor where they might not get hunted. They can get away from that pressure. They can adapt. You get into the mountain country where you got a lot more hunting, a lot more activity. I would say an older bull in that area is going to be 8, 9 years old. But they can find those hell holes too where they can grow up and be 11, 12 years old where that bull just lived in a hell hole where nobody ever found him.
Right.
And they'll be big too. But those mountain elk, they got a lot harder winters. They usually got to migrate. They migrate off those mountains and they get down to the low country. So they're covering a lot of mileage, and it's during the end of the rut. So not only have they been running their guts out for the whole month of September trying to breed cows, and November hits and the snow gets deep, December hits, snow gets deeper, and they have to migrate out of the mountains. So it's kind of a process. So you see those older bulls. I'd say an old mountain bull is going to be a 10-year-old mountain bull is going to be an old bull, but I guarantee you there's guys that have killed, and they're going to guys on this podcast cussing right now saying, "I've killed a 14-year-old bull." I'm sure there's the end of the other end of the spectrum.
There always is when it comes to bison. Bears, wolves,
exactly,
elk, you name it. There's a whitetail, doesn't matter. But it's good to hear. This kind of information. I think people definitely soak up, and I'm learning a lot just talking to you right now. But this to me is this phenomenon of elk hunting. It's crazy to me. Again, I didn't know anything about it till I got here. I knew a little bit just from buddies of mine that hunt, and they're like, "Oh, you see these guys take off, and I'm going on an elk trip for a year." Buster's one.
Yeah.
Buster would go on an elk trip every year, and I would talk to Buster, and I didn't get it. And then I went on a trip out of Meeteetse, obviously, over in the Wood River, packed in, and that was the first time that I got, it was a 13-mile ride in, horseback. And as we got about a mile from camp, we came into a clearing of trees, and that was my first, other than those ones in the, driving by up by Banner, that was the first time that I've been really close to a completely wild mountain bull elk, and he was standing right in a clearing. And the horses that we were on are obviously good-sized horses, and this thing was a monster. I mean, he was big, and he took a look at us, and then he took off, and he was gone. And for me, watching that, I mean, bison obviously, they open their trachea up, and they put their tongue out, and they will rock and roll for 30 miles at 30 miles per hour. They will rock and roll, and they won't stop. But that's the first time I've seen an animal do that up the side of a mountain. And I just remember I was in awe. It was like watching Barry Sanders or, an incredible athlete, a highlight reel, but watching an elk run straight up the side of a 10% grade on a mountain and not stop and just book it. Man, I was in shock. So I'm a huge fan. The other animal here that I've become fascinated with, because I have them on my property, and I don't have a lot of property. I say property like I don't have a lot of property, but the place that I live in an 800 square foot cabin up in the mountains here. And I get a moose that comes through probably once a week, and she'll come through. This is now 3 years that a couple times a year she comes through. She's been through once with a calf, and then came back through. I don't know what happened, but that's another animal that I've become absolutely fascinated with. And then I'll go up. I'm not going to mention too much about it on the podcast, but there's an area that I go up that's frequented by people here, but a lot of the people that go up that road don't. It's Red Grade Road, but the area that I go to, people will drive through there and they won't be looking on the side of the road. Multiple times in the last few months, there's a couple spots where I see the same bull moose, and I don't know if you saw photos that I posted on my Instagram.
I did.
This thing is an absolute, and I see the same guy. I've seen him 3 times in the last month, and he is an absolute monster.
Yeah.
I mean, absolute monster. And I've got this attachment to bison in my mind, because that's an animal when we talk about killing your ego. Bison don't have egos. They're not going to bug anybody at all ever until they're threatened. They just don't. It's a beautiful animal. I think elk are the same way. Moose, I think, carry that same characteristic of they're not going to mess with you unless you mess with them.
Absolutely.
But I'm leading into this. This is a segue into because, watching your stuff quietly for the last few years, one of I think your more important hunts in your life was just this last year. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So
because again, moose aren't in that many places in the United States, and the moose the size that they have here in Wyoming rival, Alaska and 50. Go ahead and tell your story.
All right. So as a kid growing up, like Bert was saying, in Wyoming, the moose it's an iconic animal, and every hunter would love to harvest a moose. So there's a lot of guys that would like to. But to draw a moose license, it's a limited quota.
What's the hardest tag in Wyoming to get? Sorry.
It's probably
bighorn,
mountain goat.
Mountain goat.
Because I'll break it down real quick. Through the Game and Fish has a bonus point system.
Right.
So for every year that you put in for a bighorn sheep or a moose that you don't draw, if you don't draw, you get a preference point that falls into the next year, and so that betters your odds a little bit for the next year, and so on. Mountain goat and bison, they don't have preference points. It's complete random chance of drawing it. So they would be your hardest tags to draw.
Right.
I guess a bighorn sheep, if you have 0 points, and you're 30 years from being able to draw it, or who knows? You have it's hard to draw a bighorn sheep, a bison, a moose, and a mountain goat. Those are the 4 hard ones to draw. Anyways, I'm lucky enough that my dad started putting me in for moose when I was 12 years old. So I had 22 preference points.
Which is
a lot. So maximum last year in 2019, I want to say max was stone cool, 24, 25. And I had 22. So what I started doing, and my buddy and I, we started researching. I shot a bighorn sheep in 2017. And I only had 16 points for that. But the only way that I started researching, I started looking at the breakdown of what it was taking for points to draw certain areas. If you have this many points, you have better odds of drawing this area. Well, when you get to the harder areas, as harder as success rates being low, wolf populations being high, grizzly bear populations being high, those units, you have a better chance of drawing, because a lot of guys don't want to go play with grizzly bears. The numbers of the animals are not lower because of the predation is so high with grizzly bears and wolves, moose in particular. And so this bighorn sheep, I found a unit that was easier to draw, but the success rate was very, very, very low. Long story short, I was lucky. I drew it. I was able to harvest a ram.
Probably not a whole lot of luck involved in it.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. That was a highlight, a big time highlight of my life. Fast forward the next year, we started researching moose because my buddy was sitting pretty decent on moose points. So we started researching areas that would have been easier to draw with a lower amount of points. That put us right smack dab in the middle of grizzly bear country. Well, long story short, we went in there. He harvested a giant old 10-and-a-half-year-old bull or 11-and-a-half-year-old bull. Then same thing. The next year, last year, 2019, I researched, and I found an area in Wyoming that was heavily grizzly bear populated, heavily wolf populated, a little easier to draw. I applied and I drew. So then and I was up.
And real quick, what is that process?
That process.
How do you? I know the process of applying for, but how do you find out? Because again, in Wyoming, not just Wyoming, but other places, man, it literally like that day that they drop, who gets what, and I mean, it's unreal to me here because people talk about it.
Oh yeah,
like they talk about it like you're literally winning the lottery, and you're winning $1 million. It
is. So I mean, if you look at the odds.
How did you find out that you drew this tag that's 20 years in the making?
All right, so the Wyoming Game and Fish, they'll have a draw date. It's usually the first week in May.
Yeah.
So that year, I want to say it was May 9th, and they always say 10 o'clock on May 9th they're going to post the draw.
And they just post it to a website.
It's on the internet, yep, and you log in, put your info in, and
remarkable.
There you go. Good luck. And so, I say 10 o'clock on May 9th there's like no work. There's no work getting done in the state of Wyoming at 10 o'clock. Everybody's on the internet, right?
Or if they're at work, they're on the internet.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm not going to lie. That's me. I'm sitting there just hitting refresh, because all my stuff's logged in and it pops up. It says successful, moose. It says, what area you put in for, moose, successful. And then you're just on cloud nine. And right then my mind just starts rolling and you're calling buddies, you're calling my dad, I'm calling everybody.
Well, and so that's the next question is you realize you got it. And then for somebody like you that's an athlete with this and that trains physically, that trains every day with your bow, now you're going into now it's training time. Now it's like, hey, get my gear together, get my set together, get maps out, start mapping everything out, where I'm going, when I'm going, how I'm getting there.
Man, I will rewind that even. I was scouting before I even had drawn. So when I was looking at applying for this area,
you were already out there.
I was out there in January, and you don't even apply till the end of February. I was in January. I was already looking at maps. I had already called people that had that tag the fall before. I was on Instagram. Man, I would get on photographers around the state. Everybody loves coming to Wyoming and take pictures. So this genus, species of moose is called the Shiras moose.
Shiras.
So there's the Shiras moose, there's the Canadian moose, and there's the Alaskan Yukon moose. 3 subspecies of moose. There might be a 4th one out on the East Coast. I'm not sure, but I know the 3. This is the smallest of the 3 as far as antler and body size go. The Yukon being the biggest, the Canadian bull being the second.
Let's put this in perspective. Like small is how big was...
A bull is going to be, I'm going to say on the hoof, they're going to be 800 to, this is a rough guess, 800 to 1,100 pounds on the hoof. Big. And the Yukon bulls, I think, will be around that 12 to 15. I don't know. They're big. They're huge. Yeah. 6 foot at the shoulders, 7 foot at the shoulders. They're huge. This is the Shiras, Wyoming bull. So Alaskan bulls... Antler spread on an Alaskan bull is going to be 60 to 70 inches. 72 inches is a big bull. A Shiras moose, a Wyoming moose. So that nickname is Wyoming moose also.
Right.
And a good spread on a Wyoming moose, antler to antler tip, would be like 40 inches. That's kind of a benchmark. A lot of guys want to hit that 40-inch mark. Like that's big. 35 inches is, I would say in the record books, 36 is average. 40 is really big.
40 and bigger is big.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I'm hunting the Shiras moose. I've scouted January. I knew I wanted to put in for this unit. I drove over there, looked just at the country. I'm calling people. I got on Instagram, and I started following all these photographers that take pictures all over the state. And I would just comment on their pictures and great pictures. I do love photography. It's not all about killing the animal for me. Honestly, I love the photography. I'm a photographer.
And I want to be real clear with that this just isn't a sport hunt, kill 'em up podcast. Yeah. We're not talking here.
Yeah,
that's what I keep saying. You go out by yourself and you can feel it, and as people start to follow you, hopefully people will follow your account and watch this, because this is what I mean. Like it's, you work, I'm going to deviate for a second here.
Yeah.
Your day job is not easy. There's most people couldn't do your day job. They would hear about it and go, I could do that. No, you couldn't. So you've been fencing and building the fences at ranches and guiding, but the bulk of your hard work and food on your table comes from working a ranch as a ranch hand and running fence crews or running crews, which in Wyoming is not an easy job. Wyoming is not a flat state anywhere. Even out in the middle of Wyoming, everybody talks about it. The actual plains, sagebrush, no trees for 50 miles. There's still a lot of hills here. Yeah. So what your day job is, you explain it better than I can.
All right. So I've worked at the same ranch for going on 18 years. It's a family-owned operation. I've worked for their great family. They've taken care of me. They have hunting clients in the fall, so I guide October through November. And I feed all winter, but starting in May, June, July, August, I mean, it's chasing cows and building fence, and I've built a lot of fence.
And if you guys don't watch this, I'm going to keep interrupting you. If you don't watch this, if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening to it at, check out the YouTube version of this podcast at some point, and I'll post a picture like I always do of Sam and I standing next to each other. Sam is built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he goes out and runs cardio and runs up and down the mountains like a mountain goat. And he fences and runs fencing. And again, this is not an easy job. We're not going to talk about the ranch that he actually works on, but the fences there are not easy fences either. They're not building, 5-strand, high tensile, just one wire, 5 wires across T-post. You guys actually, your fences are as beefy, I think, as you could probably get outside of Jurassic Park. You guys have good fences.
Yeah, we build a lot of fence, and the main ranch is 38 miles around. Just one fence encompasses 38 miles. It took me a lot of years. I completely replaced that whole fence except for 2 miles of it.
38 miles of fence. You've probably
That's
fixed,
just the
replaced every single inch of that since you started 12 years ago? 18 years ago.
It'll be 18 years ago.
So you've literally built 38 miles plus a fence, and you maintain that fence, and that is part of one of your 30 jobs out there is to maintain that fence.
Keep the fence up.
In Wyoming is a big deal, especially when you're dealing with not just cattle but other animals and antelope and bison and elk and everything else. And we talk about elk here. I've learned that in the last couple months. Elk have zero disregard for fences in the sense of, typically they will go from up, they'll go from elevation down all day long, every day when they get to a spot, and they're going to follow probably the same exact footpath, and they're going to cross the same section of fence. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Path of least resistance.
The path of least resistance. They're going to find that, and they're going to follow it, so you can replace that fence or fix that fence, and you're probably going to do it every day unless you figure out a way to make it easy for them. Yeah. But, like for us, we have bison, so we can't make it easy for them, because if we make it easy for the elk, we make it easy for bison, and the last thing anybody in the world wants is bison running around the open range. But fencing. So we're back to fencing. On top of that, you guide. On top of that, you do 10 other jobs at the ranch. And I see you all the time just barreling back and forth from town in your work truck while you're working. But where I'm going with this is all the stuff we're talking about hunting. Sam is not a professional hunter. He's a guide, and he works at a ranch. But this is all on top of his job. So you listen to the passion, and I think that's what I like so much about hunting. And one of the other reasons I wanted you on here is because, man, when people get into it, and it's a lifestyle and it's a culture, and it's not just about killing an animal, it's about planning, it's about the photography. I mean, half the guys I know now, like you, are also brilliant photographers, and they have an eye for it, and you guys spend so much time out there that this is a super, super positive and happy lifestyle. And I think a lot of that gets beat up by the media and by certain groups and stuff, that hunting is bad and hunting, don't kill innocent animals and this, that, and the other thing. But we keep talking about the effects of animals like elk and moose and anything else. If you don't control the population, they're going to kill people. They're going to destroy property. And, man, elk and even bison will do some serious damage. And then you get into other species and the second and third order effects of those animals. If they get overpopulated, it changes the entire dynamic all the way across the United States and North America. So this isn't just a show and podcast and having Sam on to talk about killing stuff. You love this. Like, this is outside of your family and your kid. Like, you love this. You can tell.
Yeah, it's my life. It's my family first, and then it's bow hunting. And bow hunting doesn't mean just killing. Exactly. I'm glad you said that, because for me, bow hunting it's the experience. Yeah. I'm gonna sit right here. I actually saw a post today from one of the most well-known. I can't say well-known. One of the best bow hunters that I really look up to. He's a guy. His name's Dan Picard. I'll mention his name. He's an Eastman's Hunting Journal guy. He said it's hard to watch the animal die. And yeah, that's not what you do it for. It's the experience. You're putting meat on the table, And the minute that animal is deceased and on the ground, I'm going to be the first guy. I'll shed a tear. I take my hat off. I thank the hunting gods. I do have a tradition that when I'm taking care of the meat and I get done processing every bit of the meat, it's in my backpack or it's on a horse and it's getting ready to pull out there, I take the 4 legs. So from the joint, the elbow joint down, I take all 4 legs and I put them in the crook of a tree. I actually learned that from an outfitter at Jackson, Wyoming. He's like a brother to me. And he said, you're releasing the spirit of the animal back to the hunting gods. And you thank them. And I know it sounds a little cheesy, but man, for me, it's, you took an animal's life. Like, and I look at fawns as they're growing up. I look at them as they're getting young bulls and young bucks. And I look at them as when you actually harvest that mature animal. I mean, you took a life, and it means more to me than just killing it. I take a grip and grin photo because I take a picture and I smile because I'm proud, and I make that animal look clean. I don't like blood. I like it to look as good as I can and as real as it can. I feel like I do owe it to that animal. It's just definitely not about the kill. So.
No, and for North America, and I won't get into cultures too much, but this has gone on for thousands of years in North America, and obviously hundreds of years since our ancestors came here. But, hunting is always in North America. I think since caveman days has always been, there's been a side of it that you just talked about, whether it's putting a hieroglyph on a cave wall to respect the elk, to respect bison, to respect bears, whatever it is. And it's so fun to watch people follow that, because you're not, and I don't know if you ever would be the type of person that profits off or that does that. There's nothing wrong with having that, but I don't ever see you being that guy that's going to just hammer animals all over the place and just sell it and sell it and sell it. And the fact that people, and I'm not knocking anybody, this isn't directed at anybody, but there's definitely 2 sides that I've seen. One is the hunting industry that is hyper-focused on money.
Yeah.
And there's part of that, I think a vast majority of that, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a hunter, I'm learning to be. The last few years I've had a lot of fun hunting, but I'm learning. I'm in 2nd grade, probably, kindergarten maybe, 1st, 2nd grade. But there's that side that you're talking about, that people that work their asses off 365 days a year, but they take those breaks in there, and hunting to them is everything. It's outside, like you said, outside of your family. Hunting is a time to get away. It's a spiritual time. It's for most of these guys, I don't know about yourself, I won't speak for you, but it's religious in a sense that it's a reboot. It's an appreciation of life, and that's what I love hearing every time you and I have talked about hunting, because I called you or text you and said, hey, I want to get a recurve bow or a longbow, and I want to learn how to do that. Compound bows and stuff is great, but for me, it's just something I've always wanted to as a kid.
Yeah.
And you said, hey, that's not my thing. I can do it, and I'm okay at it, but get a hold of Devin or somebody else. And talking about Devin Riley, who you have worked together with Devin, or somebody like that, and you've offered me a little guidance on it, but the spiritual side of hunting to me is something that I'm learning about in the last 2 years, and it's absolutely remarkable. It's just, I can't speak of it enough, and that's why I wanted to bring you on here, because we had Tyler Sharp from Modern Huntsman, and his goal with Modern Huntsman in the magazine is to get more non-hunters to appreciate hunting. And it's how many times you've gone out and been unsuccessful, and you've put, probably not a lot because you're good at what you do, but you have. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I've come home empty-handed a lot.
But you still... I
had the experience.
Yeah, you did. And it was getting out in the outdoors, and I keep saying it, that appreciation for life. And like you said, I'll shed a tear, I can only imagine what the moment was like when you dropped that moose, and you're in a river in the middle of nowhere, and you're by yourself. I
had a hunting partner with me on that.
Did you on that one?
Yep.
Your hunting partner's nowhere to be found, because you guys are like that. You disappear when cameras come out most of the time. But so you did have a hunting partner with you.
Yeah, my buddy Zach DeWitt. He's a.
Is that who you keep talking to? You keep referring to your hunting partner?
Yep.
Zach DeWitt.
We were college buddies and lifelong best friends now.
What does Zach do here in town?
He's a carpenter. He's his own, works for himself.
So same thing. He has a business.
Has his own business
nonstop.
And goes hard until September, and then he guides also. But he's a carpenter. He's
cool.
A hell of a carpenter. So
you drop that moose, and I can only imagine that the adrenaline, the spirituality, the appreciation for life,
flood of emotions.
Talk about it for
you take back. I just it hit me. I shot the moose. I snuck up to him to 30 yards, 28, 29
How long
yards.
had you been going from start to finish on this until you made contact?
The stock?
Yeah.
The stock, I bet, I got on YouTube. The stock, I broke down the YouTube video, but I bet the stock was only about 15 minutes. I spotted this bull and I made quick.
Oh, it's pretty quick.
I got in the water and the water was rippling and it was cold in the end of September. It was actually, it was a year ago yesterday that I harvested that bull. So I got in the water and I was able to move fast because the noise was covered and there was a little bit of breeze and he was bedded down the willows. Within 15 minutes, I was sub 30 yards. I started raking the brush. And he was bedded down. I started raking the brush and grunting like another bull moose. And he stood up, had a perfectly broadside shot. I shot him one arrow. He ran probably 100 yards, and that was it.
That was it.
He laid down, and it was done. It was quick. And when that hit, I hustled back because my buddy Zach was up on a divide where he could look down. He was watching over. And he goes, he went into that hole. He hasn't moved. And so we hustled up the ridge and got to where we could see him. We sat on the ridge and gave him his time. You know, I give things time to expire just because the adrenaline of an animal, I mean, their will to survive, that's what they're there for. They've ran from things their whole life. So they can run on adrenaline even with an arrow, perfectly placed arrow through the vitals.
So you don't want to approach them and cause more stress.
You don't want to stress them and bump them. And
yeah,
you just let them have peace and do their thing. And we sat up on the ridge. We gave it some time. And when I didn't see his antlers move, you're still, man, being a bow hunter, you're still really cautious. So then I snuck down.
Cautious in the sense you're not worried about the animal running away. You're cautious in the sense you don't want to go down there and get killed.
No, I don't want to run away. Say it was a marginal shot and you weren't 100% with it. You don't want to push that animal. You don't want to bump them. So time is always the thing that I'm always like, give him some time and then approach him. Well, this animal, he was dead on his feet. I mean, so he didn't even know that sharp arrow had went through him. His lungs gave out. He laid down and went to sleep.
When you say he's dead on his feet, it was a kill shot.
It was a kill shot. Perfect. Yeah. And so he runs. I give him some time. I sat there. I still snuck down to him where I snuck right into 20 yards. And when I got to 20 yards and I could see that he was deceased, that's when everything hit me. It was 22 years of points. My dad and mom had put me in as a kid, and my friends had taken time. I'd taken my family over there scouting.
22 years.
22 years I'd been dreaming of hunting a moose. And the emotion was, you want to talk about tears and just everything, shaking. And knowing that I had food, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of meat to feed my family. He was an old, mature bull. And what was neat about this that a lot of people don't know is this bull's antlers were wrapped in barbed wire. And it was wrapped around his throat also. I did not know that until I walked up on him. He had about 25 foot of barbed wire hanging behind him that he was dragging. And that bull would have died a slow, miserable death because I guarantee you he would have got caught. They rake their antlers just like an elk, like I was explaining. Right. He'd have got caught in trees. He'd have got pushed. He'd have got eaten by wolves alive. I guarantee it. He was wrapped up in it bad enough. I cut all the barbed wire off. I took a bunch of pictures of it, but I cut all the barbed wire off before I took a bunch of photos. And it was just one of those things. Like I felt like I did something. Yes, I did shoot him, but it was the nicest death that bull was ever going to get. I feel like that way in hunting too. We speak about this. If guys didn't hunt, think about the way these animals die. Their teeth wear out. They eventually just starve to death. So they lay down on a January day on the middle of a nasty mountain and they shiver to death. They die. That's how they die. I mean, hunting is about the nicest, most humane way that you could put an animal down. It all sounds gruesome. Death is hard to talk about.
I really like that you mentioned that because people don't think about that. And, I worked, when I got out of the military, I worked at an animal hospital at a zoo, and you see old age in animals, and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
It is not. They don't go to the doctors. They do, obviously, the zoo. They have vets that care for them, but in the wild,
they don't have a nursing home.
It's a pretty gruesome. It is the way of life, and it is nature, and it's been going on for a long, long time. But, like that. I did. That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah. Not a lot of people, as I said, not a lot of people know that. I guess I didn't go crazy and share that. But that bull had that much barbed wire wrapped around him, and he wouldn't.
Still plugging away though. Such a resilient animals, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, he could care less that he had barbed wire on his antlers, but. That was from I'm sure he was raking an old fence post with his antlers.
Yep.
And it got tangled up because I shot him right during the moose rut. It falls in late September in through October. And I shot him right at the beginning of the rut. So he was polishing his antlers for fighting, and he got hooked up in a bunch of barbed wire.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So is that 22 years? I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And your parents put you in for...
When I was 12 years old, they start putting you in. You get a point. And it's it's such a far-fetched idea. And then as a kid, you're like, so-and-so drew a moose tag. So-and-so drew a moose tag. And you're just like vicariously living through... Not really your buddies, because... they're all same age as you, and their parents might not have put them in. It was more like all these 60-year-old men in town, and then 55. One of my dad's buddies drew another moose tag, and then so all these old timers are just like, they're just drawing all these moose tags. Well, you didn't think about it by the time I hit 34, 35 years old that I was gonna have a pile of points, and I was in the prime of my age as far as build, my athleticism, my body shape, everything. I was ready to go do
like
this.
This was meant
to. And so it couldn't have been any more perfect for me.
Good segue. My next question. I'm pretty sure you're not one of those guys that's working out to look good at the beach. You work out to work your job, but you also work out to fence. What is that like? What does that look? Or not to fence, to hunt.
Elk don't sleep.
What does that look like for you, though? What is your workout like? To talk about your diet and your workout. So, obviously, you just talked about your diet because you guys eat a lot of
wild game,
harvested wild game, but that you self-harvested. But what? Talk about your workouts, because when people see you and they start following you, I know people are going to go, dude, that guy's a freaking animal. Like, that guy's a stud. Girls are going to message me. He's happily married to an amazing woman and has
she's an animal in the gym.
She's a beast too,
She's
man.
an animal in the gym.
She's a stud. Yeah. So
yes.
What does your workouts look like, and how do you condition to go do as much hunting as you do in some pretty austere environments?
So my wife, she's giving me a hard time. I always get up in the morning. I get up really early.
What time do you get up?
4:20 in the morning. 4:20 is when the alarm goes off. Usually I'm got the coffee rolling by 4:05. I'm usually, I'm crazy. My mind just goes and I wake up early. 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm up, 4:20. Usually get to the gym anywhere between 5 and 5:15. In the wintertime, I got horses to feed, so I'm at the gym a little bit earlier.
So traditional gym, lifting weights.
Yep. And I always tell her the elk don't sleep. I always say there's an elk on a mountain that's freezing his ass off right now, and he's going to beat me. So I got a mindset of just predators never quit is my motto.
I see it all the time.
I say predators never quit. I came up with that motto in 2013. We were sitting on a mountain and the elk were the wrong way from camp. We ended up sleeping out overnight, no food, just to chase elk. And it's just a motto I live by, and that's what I take to the gym. So when I get up in the morning, I go to the gym. I do it before I get to work. So I go to the gym. It's a high intensity workout. I don't like to push a lot of weight because I want my joints to last a long time, but I push a little bit of weight a lot. That's kind of my thing. I hammer with legs every single day. I at least do one leg thing just to keep my legs strong, and I don't do a lot of weight. I do squats. I'll maximum put maybe 185 on the bar, but I try to do like 150 reps or 200 reps of squats
weight,
a day.
Lots of reps.
Yeah, lightweight,
reps.
Lots of reps. Lunges. And then I like to stay strong in my upper body. I like a strong core because I'm packing a lot. I'm packing a lot of weight all the time. Always got a backpack on. So I'm packing a lot of weight. I want strong muscles all the way through my back. I want strong shoulders to shoot a bow forever. I pull an 80-pound bow. I want everything to be strong there. Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, I do everything.
And the rest of that is
and then I go to work, and then it's building fence. So yeah, there's some days where it's
which is a year-round job.
Double tapping. Yeah.
Wyoming and 5 degrees in February with 25 to 40 mile an hour winds. You guys are fixing fence and building fence.
Yeah, and throwing hay bales or something. I mean, it's just physical labor. There's concrete guys that work harder than I do.
Yeah, and that's it. Yep. And a guy here in town, Garrett Dotson, who I've been, I try and go out with once a week, not for pay or anything. This is just purely to get my fat ass out of a building and outside. But he has a tree company, and cutting trees down around here is no joke. Like
exactly.
It's a good crew, but that tactical and operational and industrial athlete stuff and that we're talking about, like, man, there's a group of people in this country that I think this country is built on that. Just hard labor and hard work. But that group of people are the same people who hunted to feed their families. Like, when you look at this whole thing from start to finish of that timeline of, a lot of people in the blue collar industry, they literally had to hunt to feed themselves back in the 1800s, the 1900s.
That's why I talk about my grandparents on both sides. They were all hunters. They had normal jobs. My grandpa was in the Army. When he got out of the Army, he was home hunting. Like, that was
Sheridan guy as well?
No, that was in the Yakima, Washington.
Yakima, okay.
Yeah, that was my grandpa.
So he came back from the Army and...
Yeah, well, he retired Army. But anytime he had a free moment, he was hunting. I mean, there's pictures of him, and he's stationed in Japan, and he was hunting pheasants over in Japan, and he hunted all the time wherever he was. So I got some really cool pictures of my grandpa.
That's awesome. I'll have to see him sometime.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? This season, bow season, when does bow season end here?
September 30th is when the actual archery season closes. Okay. Now you can bow hunt during the rifle seasons with wearing orange. You know, there's all sorts of rules and regulations, but if you follow your regulations, you can get a lot of bow hunting in during rifle season. I have actually one license left, and it's for a white-tailed deer. It runs to the end of this month, September, and then it also is open November 1st to November 30th. So I'll kind of hone in the month of November, hopefully get my 3-year-old little girl out with me, and we'll get a whitetail.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys always, when you're shed hunting or when you're out, I'm assuming when you're out scouting and doing that stuff, she's always with you guys.
Oh, man, I take care of her. She was with me all morning. Like right now, so like we were talking about, I worked at this job for a lot of years. I've acquired a lot of vacations. So my bosses are really cool. I pretty much cut out the whole month of September. I work a few days, but I burn all my vacation September. And so when I'm not hunting, man, this month with my daughter is
rocking and rolling.
Oh yeah. We're taking meat to the meat processors. We're cleaning coolers. We're cleaning backpacks today, moving horses around.
And she's learning. I'm sure she's like you and your wife. She's a voracious learner. She's soaking all this in.
Oh boy, that's all she talks about.
She's gonna be a little Wyoming.
Oh yeah, we're either watching elk hunting on TV, football on TV, or we're talking about elk hunting and playing with her horses. Like that's all she talks about. So.
Wyoming, man. So next is the whitetail for you, and then. Where will your season go after that? Things in the wintertime here kind of slow down.
Yeah, so then we'll whitetail hunt, and then every once in a while, the last few years, I got a really good friend down in New Mexico that has a ranch down there that I guided him, and he's a super good buddy of mine. And I've been fortunate enough to go down to his place in New Mexico and hunt mule deer down there.
Oh, cool.
In January. So that's a really, really fun hunt. And, you know, the way the rut works is kind of on latitudes. As the further south you get, the later they rut. In January, they're still rutting down there, which the mule deer rut in Wyoming is in November, and it rolls through the late December, early January down to New Mexico and Arizona. So you get down there in January, it's archery only. You're hunting in the desert, and you're chasing mule deer. And that hunt's a lot of fun. They're big. They're smart. Some of the hardest hunting I've ever done is they're just a very smart animal. They're with does, so you're hunting a herd of mule deer with a lot of eyes. And it's a fun getaway in the middle of winter up here. I've hit it down there when it's 60 degrees.
Are you guys on foot or are you on horseback?
It's all on foot.
All on foot?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't do anything with horses down there. But so, yeah, that's kind of where it does. And then springtime comes around. We start shed hunting, bear season. I really got into black bear hunting. I've harvested one. There you go. Everybody wants to know about it's not about the kill for me. Getting out in September after being cooped up all winter. Getting out in May after being cooped up all winter. I hit the mountains in May, and there's still snow. The rivers are running high. There's mud everywhere.
You're here in the Bighorns,
yeah, here, and then I've been a little further west.
I honestly, aside from Alaska for me and parts of Wyoming, other parts of Wyoming, I don't think there's a cooler place in the United States. And I don't want to don't come here. It's too cold. It's horrible.
The wind blows a lot.
It's nasty, but man, the Bighorns in May, like it's just April, May when it's rocking and rolling, the water's rocking and rolling, the snow's melting. It's like that in a lot of places. But so you'll do black bear.
Yeah.
Then
I chase black bear. I've passed on a lot of young bears. Like I don't care about just shooting one.
Yeah.
I want to find a big old mature bear that's worthy of taking home. That's going to put got some meat on them.
Yeah, they do. And here, it's funny. I won't post the videos because it's on my property. Like, and the last few days, it's pretty obvious where things are. But probably the last 2 weeks, I've had the biggest black bear I've ever seen in my entire life. Right up on my property every day, drinking water out of the creek and just kind of milling around, sniffing around. And they're remarkable here. This thing is jet black and big and just healthy.
Yeah.
And that's my first real close encounter with a black bear, like a Wyoming black bear, and they're no joke. It's pretty fascinating to watch them. They're cool animals. So that's May. And then summertime hits, and that's family time, man. I call it like money in the bank. You got to take care of mama, take care of that little kid, because when September comes, my wife hunts with me, but she'll even tell you, she goes, I like being mom more than I like hunting. So she gets out and she gets after it when we are hunting. Yeah.
But when summer comes, it's camping, it's riding horses, it's little vacations here and there, and I really bank time with mom and the little one. And because when I leave in September, this year I left August 29th and got to the mountains by myself on August 29th, and so I've been at it for. I think I've lost 11 pounds. I've hiked a lot of miles this year, just getting after it. I just love it. You talked about that getaway.
Yeah.
When I hit the mountains, and it's harder having a family now. Back when I was single, I'd go to the mountains and I never looked back. But now I got a thing called a Garmin InReach. I can satellite text. So I keep in touch with her. And man, if I hit a spot of service up on a high mountain peak, it's funny, you get out in Wyoming, hit their most random high mountain peaks, and all of a sudden your phone goes ding,
and you start getting all these messages come in. That happened in the Wood River. Like, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and then Buster and Travis, the guys who were with, they were calling some bulls in, and we walked up on top of this clearing. It's raining, it's snowing, it's sleet, and it's like 35 degrees. And this was September. It was that first big storm in last year in September.
Right about now.
Yeah, it was the same time that you were out, moose hunting.
Yep.
But it was that first big storm through like Matitsi and Wood River in that area, and it was nasty. And you're out in the middle of nowhere, and then you get on top of a mountain, and your phone just starts Verizon just starts going through. It's such a weird state, man. It's so weird. And then you're driving. I drive home every day, and I can't really talk on the phone driving from Sheridan to where I live because my phone dies. There's like 5 dead zones. Yeah. Then you get on top of a mountain in the middle of the Bighorns, and it's like crystal clear, perfect 5 bars. Yep. It's awesome. And Wyoming's such a neat place. It actually sucks. Don't come here. But man, Sam, it's been good having you on here. Is there anything you want to talk about hunting wise or what we've talked about at all? Anything else you want to discuss? Or
I guess
because I'm trying to, again, I keep saying this. I said I'd repeat it. If you're not following Sam's page on Instagram, follow it. It's everything that I believe in, personal values in hunting and family and what hunting means and putting food on your table. And Sam's page, and you guys can hear it in his voice, he's one of the most positive people you'll ever meet. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Everybody that I talk to, your name will come up because it's a small town. Man, that guy's like the most positive person ever. If he's out working, if he's out doing this, it's just funny. But follow Sam's page, but it's everything that's right with hunting and what I believe is finding happiness in your own nuclear dynamic and not having to have things and pressure and everything else from the outside. And that's what this show is supposed to be about, is killing your ego and finding happiness. And I'd love to have you on more often and totally other guys that hunt, and get some other guys on here, and maybe even figure out a way to show people out there what you guys are about and hunting in an ethical, responsible way with zero ego.
Well, I really appreciate it. And I just got to reiterate, thank you very much for having me on.
And
thank you for all the kind words, man.
Absolutely.
It's funny you talk about the Instagram thing. And we were sitting in an airport in Seattle after watching a football game, my wife and I, 3 years ago. And she's like, you need to get an Instagram. I really like to take photography.
Yeah.
All my pictures, alive of animals, animals I've harvested, anything. I really like photography. And I like.
What do you like about it?
For me, it's getting out there.
Yeah.
When it comes to wildlife photography, it's just as fun. Like, if you guys went on Tuesday, I don't have an elk license. I don't have anything. On Tuesday, I was up in the mountains with an elk call in an area that I'd never been in before, scouting for next year. Like, I'm already looking ahead for next September. And I had my cameras with me. I roll video cameras. I have a YouTube channel. I have a Canon still camera that I carry. And I'm just all about just getting outside. And the stuff I've seen, I videoed a squirrel with a pine cone just to show my daughter, because it was unbelievable how fast he could break down that pine cone. And my daughter was she loves it. But I mean, that's what it is for me. And I guess if I wanted to reiterate anything, thank you for all the kind words. Yeah. I've learned from a lot of phenomenal bow hunters. And every time I'm out there, I'm learning more. I'm definitely not the best. There's guys that are way better. There's guys that are killed way bigger and all that. For me, it's hunting is I want to kill the most mature animal I can. I want to put meat on the table for my family. And it's just this thing that I love. Instagram is, I take Instagram serious now. Like I like to put quality pictures on there because I see that there is not a need for it, because there's a lot of people that take good quality photos, but I try to be real. I try to be, that's who I am. If you met me on the street and you saw my pictures on Instagram, I'm not trying to put up a fake front.
No, and that's you don't have an ego. You don't have an ego, and it's great. And I think, your Instagram, the more that I look at Instagram, the more I gravitate. And I think if people look at things in a positive light, you'll gravitate towards accounts on Instagram and social media that's positive and not negative. And I am slowly over the last year removing all the negative stuff off. My Instagram now is chicken eggs and
that's awesome.
And dogs and positive reinforcement. But yours is like that all the time. And when you meet, and hopefully people will meet you. Some of these people will meet you and watch your, what is your YouTube? You keep talking about your YouTube. I know what it is, but tell everybody
so my YouTube
where
channel
to find you.
Is Predators Never Quit.
Predators Never Quit.
Predators Never Quit.
And then S. Davis 2560.
2506.
I'm sorry, 2506. Yeah. And then Predators Never Quit is your YouTube. You guys follow Sam. We'll get Sam back on here with some other people and dive into some more of this stuff and maybe even hope, at some point, if you'd have me come out, even when it's going out to call and stuff like that, come out and take some video and watch what you do, watch how you do things. 'Cause I think it's remarkable. And if there's people out there that are, again, hunting doesn't have to be just about hunting. It can be about what you said, getting in the mountains, getting out,
breathing the fresh air, seeing the water run. Like there's so much to it. The views, if someone were to scroll through my phone and just see all the random pictures I take, they don't even have wildlife in them. Just the mountain views. The snow in August 31st, I'm shaking snow off my tent, and it's stuff that people don't see, and it's stuff that people don't realize is even out there. Or when you wake up on a crisp morning to get out and take a leak and it's 3 a.m, there's elk bugling outside your tent. Like, it's not about the kill. I mean, that's literally 5 seconds of it. That's 5 seconds out of a 10-day trip is actually letting that arrow fly and the harvest. And
I think most things are like that. My background, it's funny when you look at like cool guy stuff in the Army or what it doesn't matter where it is. The cool guy stuff is way smaller amount of time than the prep, the training, the learning, the lessons learned, the hard days all lead up to that. And I think you're the epitome of that with hunting. And it's not just you, it's your buddies. It's everybody out there that is really getting into hunting and taking it ethically and hunting responsibly. But again, can't thank you enough for being on. We'll have to have you back here. As always, a sign off. It's a good day to be alive. Don't fuck it up. Excuse the language. And for Sam and I, tell your dogs we said hi. And that was episode number 6. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks.
Sam, thanks for coming on, brother.
Thanks a lot, man.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it.